So, real estate investors, should you find the deal first or should you find the funding first? Let's dive into this. Before I do, if you don't know, my name's Courtney Fricky. I am doing one video a day for the first 100 days of 2025. Let's get into it. All right, guys. So, this is a very common adage in the real estate investing world. It's should you get, it's the concept around should you get funding first. But a lot of times, you've got folks who say, "Hey, if you find a great deal, the money is going to come through out of the woodworks." Maybe you've heard of that, right? So here are my thoughts on that. Like, I understand that if you have a phenomenal deal, you've got options. I agree with that. Like, if you've got a great deal, you can wholesale it. You could bring on a potentially bring on a partner, all of those things. But the money's gonna, show up. I somewhat disagree with that though, because the reality is, if no one knows who you are, are they going to partner with you on a great deal? At the same time, there is a level that there's effort you have to put in to get funding. For example, different types of lenders require certain things. So let's talk through it. Should you find the deal first? Should you find the funding first? I think that once you decide on the type of strategy you want to do, you should get to know some different lending sources. So, for example, if you're wanting to do flip deals, you should make some relationship with some hard money lenders, and then you should also start learning how to do my preferred method is private money, right? So you start having those relationships, those conversations with folks who start building those relationships. I personally believe the worst time to ask for money is for the first time is when you need it, right? It shouldn't be your first conversation. And so you should establish those relationships up front. And then eventually over time, as the deals come up, then you can revisit and say, "Hey, you remember when we talked about this? I had an opportunity come up. Is this something you'd be interested in today?" Right? Versus being like, "Hey, I know we've never talked about this, but do you have $100,000? I've got a great opportunity." It almost sounds desperate. So, the same thing with partnering with people. If you're like, "Hey, I know some experienced investors who have additional capital who would be open to partnering," or maybe find some experienced investors and say, "Hey, if I ever had a great deal, would you partner with me?" Look, asking people to partner with you, people don't realize how big of an ask it is, and maybe this is just my opinion, but there's a level there. It's like asking, to get into bed with someone, right? To marry someone. So on a flip, it's a lot less of a marriage for sure. When it comes to like rentals and stuff that's more long term, it is definitely more of a marriage situation. So definitely something that you should keep that in mind. And again, if you're like, "Hey, I have this deal, and hey, I want to stay involved. I want to co-own it with you." And if I don't know you, I'm gonna immediately be like, "Yeah, no, I'm not it," right? And keep in mind, not all experienced investors want to be lenders, right? I myself am not a lender. And so when it comes to a deal, I may say, "Hey, I'll buy the deal from you and pay you a wholesale fee," right? Like there may be some other folks may be like, "Yeah, I'll partner with you on the deal." So really it's going to depend on the person. And so I personally think if you are looking to start making offers on deals this year, you should have already, and if it's stuff that you're going to take down, whether it's as a flip, as a rental, maybe it's a specific strategy like co-living or an Airbnb or something like that. Then I want to encourage you to look up funding sources, both traditional, like institutional, as well as the more creative ways, and then as that goes, at least have a baseline. Maybe you're like, "My preferred method is seller financing." And then secondly, it's private money. But then the last option I have is to use maybe a hard money loan to get in the deal and then to do a DSCR loan as a refinance to keep it and have long-term funding. And then the very final option is a traditional bank loan. Okay, well then are you so if that's your your range, that's a lot of different funding sources. The question is, do you know what each one of those require? What does it take to get a seller to say yes to seller financing? Um, if you're going to do private money, are you having conversations with everyday people in your life to see if they would want to earn, a return on their money and, have it tied to one of your real estate deals, for the hard money to get into a deal. And then the, DSCR loan. Are you talking to hard money lenders and DSCR lenders? And then lastly, the traditional, like a bank loan. Do you understand what each one of those require, right? And so I'm not saying go go down the rabbit hole of each one of those, but you at least can say, hey, I know what each one of these would require. You may say, hey, if I'm looking to get into the rental business, you may want to research each of those options and say, which one am I going to look at? And hey, maybe if you can't get one of those, like the deal to line up, then you say, hey, well, then I'll wholesale that deal, right? Or something like that. And so, um, I think a lot of people have been taught, just go find the deal and the money will show up. And then people have found plenty of great deals over time, but then because they didn't actually put in the work to understand the financing part, they missed out on the deal. And maybe they either never did anything with it, they had to walk away, or they had to wholesale it. I know I had to wholesale a ton of properties that I wish I would have never done so, and I wish I would have had the skills and the understanding of how to get longer term financing. I remember at that time, I was only good at getting, 6 to 12 month financing from private money. So, in essence, a version of hard money, if you will, because it was short term. I wish I would have known how to get into those and then how to do something like a DSCR loan on the back end, or how to have conversations with everyday individuals about long term lending. So, guys, those are my thoughts. Look, if you're actively trying to make sure, like, don't put all your effort into finding deals, put your effort into the funding part as well. Literally on my goals this year, I plan to do about 30 deals. Um, and I want to take down at minimum 15 of those as rentals. And the other ones might be land deals, might be some wholesale deals, things like that, might be some option deals, whatnot. But literally on theirs, I want to create 8 new private money lender relationships. That is literally tied to one of my acquisitions goal is a funding goal, right? A funding source type of goal. And so understand that that's important to have those relationships, to think ahead of time, and to know, what I just did my fixture income workshop here recently, and one of the things we established was, how do you fund deals? I went through all the different, models of funding in the real estate investor world. And I encouraged them, I said, find the one that stands out to you and then go and build relationships in that sphere. And, whether it's say you're like, hey, Courtney, I do want to do those DSCR loan type deals. Well, then go and learn what it takes to do a DSCR loan. Get to know a few different DSCR lenders. What do they require? What is their process? And then, hey, if you find a deal, what do you need to do to come to them to basically be ready? What do you have to have? Is it a certain credit score? Is it, reserves in the bank? Things like that. So keep those things in mind, you guys. Look, I don't want anyone to be, it sounds good in theory, but I don't want you to miss out on great opportunities. So I want to encourage you, don't just spend all your time looking for deals, especially if you want to take them down. Find ways to understand different funding sources, and then also build those relationships ahead of time so that when a deal comes up, you lease are not that's not your first time talking to them. Yes, there's times that plenty of people, it's been their first time doing a deal. First time, I'm sorry, they have a deal and it's their first time talking to a lender and they can get it done. But most of the time, I think it's best when you already have a pre-established relationship and understanding of the type of loan product. So, all right, that's my tip today. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the next micro podcast.